Chapter 871. Immediately afterwards, Nisideo said something in his mouth, and after a bang, countless black chi enveloped the area hundreds of meters in radius. The black chi covering the sky and the sun instantly turned day into night. David did not panic, but swiped the dragon-slaying sword in his hand in the void, and a piece of silver splattered, making the darkness brighten again. Nisideo ignored David, and the magic in his mouth became faster and faster, and then he drew a circle in the void with his right hand, and there were ripples in the circle, as if time and space were twisting. Roar! A roar, followed by a spit out a scarlet core from the circle, a water tank thick, densely scaled flood snake rushed out. This flood snake has a bloody smell on its body, as if it had just emerged from the pile of dead people. Drilled out the same. Facing the snake in front of him, David frowned slightly, because the snake in front of him was not an illusion, but a real living thing, as if it came from another time and space. David, what can you do if you can absorb the evil spirit? This time I will summon the ancient beasts to deal with you. Looking at the snake in front of him, Nisideo's eyes were full of enthusiasm, but his huge body quickly returned to normal, and his face became ugly. After he finished speaking, a mouthful of blood spurted out. It seems that Nisideo consumed almost all his mana in order to summon this serpent. Boom! David faced the rushing snake, and the dragon-slaying sword in his hand waved in front of him, mixed with the sword energy of flames, and slashed directly at the snake. The sword chi slashed fiercely on the snake, followed by a deafening sound, the radiance overflowed, and the flames splashed everywhere. The snake's body was tossing up and down, it seemed to feel pain, and then a blazing light spurted out of its mouth, the earth trembled, and the rocks crumbled. David's figure quickly retreated, avoiding the attack of the serpent, and at this moment, David's hand holding the dragon-slaying sword was trembling slightly, and his mouth was numb. The scales of this serpent were too hard, and the dragon-slaying sword could not injure the serpent. David. At this time, Xiaolan and Zhao Wuji actually chased after them. They sensed the terrifying aura in the mountains and forests here and were worried about David's safety, so they chased after him. But just after chasing him, he saw a 10-meter-long jiao snake with the thickness of the water tank confronting David, which scared everyone. You must know that Horindal is not a mountainous area, and there is no virgin forest. How could such a huge snake suddenly appear? Don't come here, stay away. David hurriedly stopped Xiaolan and the others from approaching. The strength of this flood snake is too strong, with Xiaolan and the others' strength, they can't resist this flood snake's blow at all. SSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS David again, its tail swept around, causing many trees to be uprooted and rocks flying. David raised the dragon-slaying sword, jumped up again, and then jumped down from mid-air, slamming into the back of the serpent. Boom! There was a loud bang, and the violent collision emitted a dazzling brilliance, like two boulders slamming together. The Jiao snake let out a whimper, and then its tail swept directly towards David, with an extremely fast speed, like a steel whip, which slapped David fiercely. David's body was like a cannonball, it was pulled out fiercely, and it stopped after hitting a big tree. David! Mr. Chen! Xiaolan and the others hurried over and helped David up. David's mouth overflowed with blood. Although his strong body was not injured, the huge power caused damage to David's internal organs. Chapter 872. Ha ha ha, David, even if you are physically strong, in front of this snake, you can only be beaten. Kill them for me. Ni Sideo laughed, one hand struggling to support the black halo. He can't let the halo disappear, otherwise the snake will die instantly. This snake is not an animal here, and finally it needs to return to the place where it came from through the black halo. David looked at Ni Sideo. Although Ni Sideo's face was extremely ugly at the moment, he was struggling to maintain the black halo. David understood in an instant that as long as the black halo disappeared, the serpent would disappear along with it. Thinking of this, David took the dragon-slaying sword, strenuously moved towards Nisideo, and slashed towards Nisideo's arm with a fierce sword. When the snake saw this, its tail swept out, directly forcing David back, then opened its bloody mouth and bit David's arm. The huge bite force made David's body froze, and then he was thrown up by the snake. David's body was thrown high into the air, and then fell to the ground. The ground was smashed into a deep pit, and David climbed out of the pit with difficulty. At this moment, David's arm can already see blood. Even if his body is strong and bitten by the snake, David's arm is still injured. David! Xiaolan hurriedly tore off her clothes and wanted to bandage David. Get out of the way! David felt a gust of wind coming, and hurriedly pushed Xiaolan aside, while he was hit by the snake with its tail. Bang! David's body flew more than 10 meters away and fell heavily to the ground. Blood continued to overflow from the corners of David's mouth. Mr. Chen. Seeing this, Zhao Wuji and Bai Zhantang finally took out their weapons and attacked the serpent. David was about to say something to stop it, but it was too late. As soon as the two rushed up, they were swept up by the snake's tail and shot directly into the air. At this moment, Bai Zhantang and Zhao Waoqi were both unable to stand up, and they were seriously injured. David stood up with his body supported by the dragon-slaying sword. His eyes glared at the serpent. This guy's whole body is hard and scaly and can't be hurt at all. If you fight like this, you will lose sooner or later. Come on, kill them. Nisideo's face became more and more ugly, his body was shaking slightly, he couldn't hold it anymore, he had to let the snake kill David as soon as possible. SSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSssssssss. David. He opened his mouth wide open, revealing sharp fangs, ready to swallow David into his stomach. David! Mr. Chen! Xiaolan and Zhao Wuji were all panicked when they saw this scene, but none of them had the ability to save David. And David himself seemed a little powerless in the face of the bloody mouth of the serpent. At this moment, he was injured and had no ability to escape this blow. Just at the critical moment, a soft white light suddenly appeared in David's body, and then the white light became more and more intense, and even directly irradiated David's body into a transparent state. I saw that in David's body, the dragon crystal was flickering with light, and under the white light, the snake became panicked in an instant, and then began to roll on the ground continuously, wailing. The body of the snake was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. The snake that was more than 10 meters long was only a few meters long in just a few tenths of seconds. The snake tumbled in pain, and his body desperately moved towards Nisideo, then jumped hard, and got directly into the black halo to prepare to escape. Chapter 873. Seeing this scene, Nisideo was stunned for a long time, not sure what was going on. You must know this last trick, but they are Tianluo Pavilion's killer. This Jiao snake is the patron saint of Tianluo Pavilion. Unless it is absolutely necessary, he will not summon this Jiao snake. But now, the patron saint of Tianluo Pavilion is about to turn into a little snake at this moment, and he is still trying to escape in a panic. How can this not shock Nisideo? Want to go? When David saw that the snake wanted to escape, he jumped out, grabbed the tail of the snake directly, and dragged the snake, which had already got halfway into its body, out. Jiao snake faced David, and his fierce appearance had long since disappeared. He was so frightened that he turned his head and ran away, while the dragon-slaying sword in David's hand swung down with all his might. Pfft! The head of the snake was chopped off by David in an instant, and blood was sprayed all over the ground. Pfft! After David chopped off the snake's head, Nisideo couldn't hold it anymore, the black halo disappeared instantly, and he seemed to have aged a lot in an instant, fell to the ground, and even lost the strength to stand. David put away the dragon-slaying sword and turned to look at Nisideo, who was sitting on the ground, his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Seeing David like that, Nisidao's pupils shrank suddenly, and his eyes were full of terror. Don't kill me, you can let me do anything. Nisidao was trembling all over, begging for mercy. The dignified Wu Zong, the pavilion owner of Tianluo Pavilion, is now begging for mercy in front of David. Xiaolan looked at the scene in front of her, and her heart was extremely shocked. You must know that this Nisidao is a respectable person in dozens of sects in the southwest. Whether it is King Miao or that Xia Hedun, she must be respectful when she sees Nisidao. But he is such a powerful character, and now he is begging for mercy like a grandson in front of David. David's image became much greater in Xiaolan's heart, and Xiaolan's feelings for David deepened. Snapped. David pressed a hand directly on the top of Nisidao's head, and then the concentration technique worked. The huge suction force began to continuously suck the energy in Nisidao's body. Nisidao struggled desperately, but couldn't move at all. After just a few minutes, Nisidao's body had become dry, his eyes were wide open, and he couldn't rest his eyes. The light on David's body slowly dissipated, and the surroundings fell silent for a moment. David's spiritual power that was lost in the battle with the serpent was replenished at this moment. Looking at Bai Zhantang and Zhao Wuji who were injured and fell to the ground not far away, David walked over, grabbed the hands of the two, and poured pure spiritual power into the two of them, and the injuries of the two quickly improved. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Bai Zhantang and Zhao Waoqi got up and hurriedly followed David to thank him. It should be me thanking you. If you didn't help me, you wouldn't be hurt. After David finished speaking, he walked to the side of the beheaded serpent, smashed the snake's head with one palm, and a crystal clear beast pill rolled out. David picked up the beast pill and was very excited. It seems that he guessed right. These beasts already have beast pills in their bodies, and these things are precious things for cultivation. This serpent's scale armor is hard, it's good to make a piece of armor, and this flesh and blood can improve your strength, you can take it back and share it. David said to Bai Zhantang and Zhao Waoqi. The two of them were overjoyed and hurried forward to dismember the serpent, while David led Xiaolan towards the Gu family slowly. Xia Hedun was still sitting paralyzed in the ancient house like mud, watching David come back. His body was covered in blood. Xia Hedun knew that Nisidao might not be able to escape. David didn't follow that Xia Hedun's nonsense either, slapped Xia Hedun's head with his palm, and directly sucked out the energy in Xia Hedun's body. Chapter 874. At this moment, David just wants to use the fastest way to improve his strength. The enemies he faces are getting stronger and stronger. If he doesn't improve his strength as soon as possible, he can't even protect his relatives around him, so how can he save himself? Mother. Now David no longer has any scruples, even if there are other people present, David no longer hides it, and directly runs the concentration technique to absorb the energy of others. Gu Wenchen looked at David and couldn't calm down for a long time. In just a few short months, David's strength developed so rapidly. You must know that at the beginning, David had to rely on himself to cover it, but now? I am afraid that Gu Wenchen is not as good as David, no matter in terms of strength or status. There is also Bai Xiashan on the side, and his heart is very shocked at this moment. He has put all the future of the Bai family on David, and now it seems that he is right. Whether it was Xia Hedun or that Nisidao, they were both masters of Wuzong, or people who had been famous for many years, but now they were both beheaded by David. David's strength is evident. Bai Xiashan made up his mind, and in the future, David's their Bai family has made up their minds. Ancient, please send someone to deal with it. David pointed to Xia Hedun's shriveled body and said. Mr. Chen, don't worry, I'll call someone to deal with it right away. After Gu Wenchen finished speaking, he waved his hand, and immediately someone carried Xia Hedun's body away, and then Gu Wenchen asked David softly, Mr. Chen, I don't know about Linger. The Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. David is with Gu Linger. Now that David is back, Gu Wenchen has not seen Gu Linger, so he wants to ask David where Gu Linger is. Gu Linger is practicing with Sonia and Uncle Long. I don't know where they are, but Gu, don't worry, Linger will be fine. David explained with Gu Wenchen. Don't worry, it's just that I haven't seen this girl for a while, and I miss her. Gu Wenchen smiled slightly. He knew that David was not something in the pool. If he wanted to follow David, he had to travel around the world, but Gu Linger was following David. Gu Wenchen was relieved. After a while, Zhao Waoqi followed by Zhang Tang and dragged the corpse of the serpent back. The two of them were covered in blood and looked very embarrassed. Gu Wenchen was startled when he saw the two of them like this. Bai Ziashan, who was on the side, was also surprised, and hurriedly responded, Zhang Tang, what's going on? Bai Ziashan checked Bai Zhantang's body with a panicked face. Grandpa, I'm fine, the flesh and blood of this snake is a good thing. Bai Zhantang told Bai Ziashan and Gu Wenchen about David's beheading of the snake, which made them look at David in shock. George Zhao, you will stay in Horindal for 2 days. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, I will accompany you to Kyoto. David followed Zhao Waoqi. Okay Mr. Chen, I'll be waiting for you in Horindal. Zhao Waoqi nodded. After leaving Gu Wenchen's house, David did not go back to his hometown directly, but went to the Sui family's villa. Sonia should not come back, David is going to see Reuben. When David came to the Sui family's villa, Reuben was sitting in the courtyard drinking tea. He was alone and his hair was quite white. Uncle Su! David shouted at Reuben. Reuben was stunned for a moment, and then a surprise appeared on his face. David, you guys are back. Reuben hurriedly got up to meet him, then looked out the door and found that it was David himself, so he wondered, David, where is Sonia? Didn't you come back with you? Uncle Su, Sonia can't come back if she has something to do. I'll come and see you. Looking at Reuben's slightly old appearance, David felt a little uncomfortable. Chapter 875. Since Sonia was with her, a young lady with a lot of money did not enjoy happiness, but ran around with him, and was still afraid. In particular, Reuben, who is alone, can't see his daughter for a few months now, and he will definitely miss her. Oh! Reuben sighed in disappointment and walked back again. David drank tea with Reuben and left. He wanted to go back to Chinjia village to see his parents. In a flash, he hadn't seen his parents for several months. Brother, are you in Horindal? David had just left the Sui family villa when Chen Yingxia called David. Here, are you on vacation? David asked. Today is a holiday, if you go home, drive me back with you. She called David because she wanted David to take her home with her. You wait for me at the school gate, and I'll take you back in a while. After David finished speaking, he hung up the phone. David went to pick up Xiaolan first, then went to pick up Chen Yingxia, and the three rushed back to Chinjia village together. Brother, here. Standing at the gate of the school, Chen Yingxia desperately followed David and waved. David drove a Rolls-Royce owned by Bai Ziashan. He usually drove Sonia and Lin Tianhu, but Lin Tianhu was lying in the hospital now, and Sonia didn't come back. David used Bai Ziashan's Rolls-Royce instead. However, David didn't care much about the quality of the car, as long as he could move it. But when this Rolls-Royce stopped at the school gate, it quickly attracted the attention of many people. You must know that in a city like Horindal, not many people can afford a Rolls-Royce, and this Rolls-Royce is still the Beijing brand. Yingxia, is it your brother who drives the Rolls-Royce? Chen Yingxia's classmates asked enviously. Yes, Chen Yingxia nodded. This is still the license of Kyoto. Your brother is not a driver, right? At this time, a male classmate said half-jokingly. Your brother is the driver. My brother is amazing. My sister-in-law is the eldest lady of the Sui group. Chen Yingxia said proudly. In the past, Sonia had told Chen Yingxia to report her name when something happened. After all, the Sui family was also the richest man in Horindal. Sure enough, when Chen Yingxia said this, the male classmate was so frightened that he didn't dare to speak. David drove the car in front of Chen Yingxia, opened the door and said, "Get in the car quickly, or it will be too late to get home." "Goodbye." Chen Yingxia waved with her classmates and climbed onto the Rolls-Royce. Chen Yingxia just sat up, but found a woman sitting in the car. She didn't know. "Hello, my name is Xiaolan." When Xiaolan saw Sonia getting into the car, she politely extended her hand. "Hello, my name is Chen Yingxia." Sonia followed Xiaolan and shook hands with some restraint. "Sister Yingxia is so beautiful, no wonder your brother always praises you." Xiaolan looked at Chen Yingxia with a compliment. David was driving in front of him, rolled his eyes and was speechless, but he never mentioned Chen Yingxia in front of Xiaolan. Xiaolan said this, but she just wanted to follow Chen Yingxia to draw a distance. "Sister Xiaolan is really beautiful, and you still have a faint fragrance on your body. I don't know what brand of perfume you use." Sonia asked when she smelled the faint fragrance on Xiaolan's body. "I made the perfume on my body myself. If Sister Yingxia likes it, I will make some for you." The fragrance on Xiaolan's body is naturally emitted by her body. She is naturally charming, and the fragrance she emits is to seduce men. "Okay, thank you Sister Xiaolan." Chen Yingxia said happily. "What kind of perfume do children wear to learn knowledge?" David drove the car in front and reprimanded Chen Yingxia. Chapter 876. Chen Yingxia suddenly put her head next to David, startling David who was driving. "Brother, what about Sister Sonia? You shouldn't be the woman you're secretly looking for behind your back, right? Or maybe you dumped Sister Sonia?" Although Chen Yingxia whispered in David's ear, Xiaolan could hear it clearly. "What nonsense, Xiaolan and I are friends. She is an orphan, and there is nowhere to go during the Mid-Autumn Festival, so I brought her back." David glared at Chen Yingxia and said. Hearing David say that Xiaolan is an orphan, Chen Yingxia was slightly taken aback, obviously not thinking of it. Xiaolan herself felt sour in her heart, and tears flowed out instantly. She is an orphan, and now she really has nowhere to go. When she was in Miao village, although King Miao was her own enemy, after all, she had raised her for so many years, and she could be considered a home in Miao village, and she had a family by her side. Lots of friends and relatives. But now, she has nothing but Wu Meier's younger sister. Now she really has nowhere to go. If she doesn't follow David, she doesn't know what to do. Seeing Xiaolan crying suddenly, Chen Yingxia looked a little embarrassed and panicked. "Miss Xiaolan, I'm sorry." Chen Yingxia took out a tissue and handed it to Xiaolan. "It's okay, I'm used to it." Xiaolan wiped her tears and said with a smile. For a time, the atmosphere in the car became a little awkward and silent. Soon, the car drove into Qinjia village, and many people were watching David's car. After all, Qinjiakan has never seen a luxury car like Rolls-Royce. "Dad, Mom!" David walked into the yard and shouted excitedly as soon as he entered the door. Having not seen his parents for several months, David had long thought about it. Barbara and Chen Baoqiu came out of the room, and they all looked surprised when they saw David. "Son!" Barbara quickly ran to David and hugged David. Chen Baoqiu also looked at David with a smile on his face. "We haven't seen each other for several months." Barbara and Chen Baoqiu actually miss David, but they know that David is at the time of his career, so they never make phone calls to add burden to David. "Hello, Uncle, Auntie." Xiaolan looked at Barbara and Chen Baoqiu and shouted politely. At this time, the two discovered Xiaolan. After Barbara looked Xiaolan up and down, she hurriedly pulled David aside. "David, who is this girl? Where's Sonia?" The smile on Barbara's face disappeared, and she questioned David. "Mom, Sonia has something to do, so she didn't come back. This is a friend of mine named Xiaolan. She is an orphan and has nowhere to go, so I took it home." David whispered in Barbara's ear. Barbara looked at David, as if she didn't believe it. "Really, you didn't lie to me?" "Mom, how could I lie to you? I'm on good terms with Sonia," David said firmly. Seeing that David didn't seem to be lying, Barbara changed her face and walked to Xiaolan. Hello, it's cold outside, come and sit in the room." Barbara took Xiaolan's hand and walked into the room. Chen Baoqiu stepped forward and patted David on the shoulder. "Good son, you have the ability." After finishing speaking, Chen Baoqiu also entered the room with a slightly profound expression on his face, which made David a little overwhelmed. Stayed at home for one night, and the next day is Mid-Autumn Festival. Early in the morning, Barbara called David up. "David, your uncle and the others came back from the provincial capital. They set up a few tables in the town at noon. You get up early and you're done washing up. Let's go there early," Barbara said to David. "Uncle?" David was stunned. Why didn't he know there was an uncle? "It belongs to your second grandfather's family. They went to the provincial capital very early. I heard that they are doing big business in the provincial capital. If you have more contact, maybe there is a useful place." After Barbara finished speaking, she went to work. Chapter 877. As soon as Barbara left, Xiaolan ran into David's room with a swish. When David saw Xiaolan suddenly broke in, he was so frightened that he hurriedly covered his body with a quilt and curled up to a corner. "What are you going to do?" David asked Xiaolan. "This lonely man, what do you think I'm going to do?" Xiaolan smiled and stepped forward and lifted David's quilt. But when the quilt was lifted, Xiaolan was stunned. "Why are you still wearing clothes when you sleep?" I saw that David was wearing clothes, not as Xiaolan thought. "I wear clothes to sleep, just to prevent you, a little five-lut." David raised the corner of his mouth, stood up slightly proudly and said, "Humph, ba5tard, sooner or later, let you obediently obey me." Xiaolan pouted and snorted coldly, and could only follow David out of the room. Near noon, David drove his parents and Xiaolan to the hotel in the town. After arriving in the box, Chen Yingxia and David's second aunt had already arrived. "Miss Xiaolan, sit here." After Chen Yingxia saw Xiaolan, she hurriedly greeted Xiaolan and sat beside her. Xiaolan originally wanted to sit next to David, but was called away by Chen Yingxia. And David was pulled by his second aunt to ask questions, and David could only answer one by one. 10 minutes later, the box door was pushed open, and two people walked in, one old and one young. The old man looked to be 50 or 60 years old, while the young man looked about the same age as David. "Big brother." Seeing the person coming, Barbara hurriedly got up to meet her. It turned out that this person was Barbara's cousin Tang Shili, and the young man was his son Tang Hui. Although Barbara greeted her very enthusiastically, Tang Shili's expression did not see much change. She just glanced at everyone and sat on the master's seat. And Tang Hui, who was behind him, also had a proud face. When his eyes fell on Chen Yingxia and Xiaolan, he obviously stopped for a moment. "David, Yingxia, this is your uncle and your cousin," Barbara said to David and Chen Yingxia. "Hello uncle, hello cousin." Chen Yingxia got up and said hello. However, David didn't move or speak. From the expression on Tang Shili's face just after entering the door, David could see that there was no family in his eyes. The reason why he called to eat together should be just to show off. Ping will not come. Seeing that David hadn't moved, Barbara had no choice but to explain to Tang Shili, "Brother, don't take offense, David doesn't talk much." Tang Shili looked at David, and then said to Barbara, "Barbara, I'm not talking about you as the eldest brother. Look at how you spoil your child. The one who just came out of jail is your family, right?" Barbara's face was suddenly embarrassed, but she could only smile and nod her head, yes. See, if you don't discipline your child, someone will discipline you. This prison sentence will end your life, and in the future, you will only be a little BA5TARD, the kind of person who is rejected. Tang Shili, with an aloof attitude, preached to Barbara. Although Barbara was displeased, she didn't dare to say anything. At this moment, Chen Baoqiu also froze and lit a cigarette. Brother, it's hard for you to come back. Let's order food first. By the way, what big business are you doing in the provincial capital now? Seeing this, Aunt David hurriedly opened up the topic. I didn't do any big business, just engaged in real estate and tourism. When I came back this time, I also planned to turn several nearby towns into a tourist attraction. Tang Shili said. That's really great. Aunt David smiled, and then set her eyes on Tang Hui. What is Xiaowei doing now? I haven't seen it for many years. I used to be a little kid, but now I have grown up. So hi. Chapter 878. I gave him a position in the government department, and now he's a section chief. Tang Shili said. Section chief. David's second aunt took a deep breath. In a place like the provincial capital, to be a section chief, I am afraid that it is bigger than our Horrendal mayor. That's not true, but I often drink with Ling Zhenchuan, the mayor of Horrendal. Tang Hui said at this time. Although it seems humble, there is no modest meaning in that tone. It's amazing to be able to drink with the mayor. In the future, you should help your aunt more. Aunt David smiled. Tang Hui did not answer Aunt David, but sat beside Tang Shili, looked at Xiaolan, and then asked, Who is this? Why don't I have an impression? This is David's friend, let's have a mid-autumn festival together. Barbara explained. But this explanation, in the eyes of others, Xiaolan is David's girlfriend. Tang Hui glanced at David jealously, but did not speak. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open, and a man in his 40s walked in. Senior Tang, I'm sorry, I'm late. The visitor respectfully followed Tang Hui. Mayor Kui. Seeing the person coming, Chen Baoqiu and the others hurriedly got up. The person coming was the mayor of their town. Mayor Kui, we just arrived, find a place to sit. Tang Hui said proudly. Despite Tang Hui's attitude, Mayor Kui didn't care at all and hurriedly sat beside Tang Hui. Soon, people kept walking into the private room, either the mayor or the director, and the room was quickly filled. David and the others were squeezed into a corner, and Xiaolan sat next to David as she wished. David, what kind of uncle are you? This is a family banquet. It's obviously someone else who's invited. You are just to accompany you. Xiaolan whispered to David. David has long seen that this Tang Shili is just to show off in front of the two of them, so he called them here. Now the whole private room is crowded with people, all the local officials, and they continue to follow Tang Shili and Tang Hui toast, but David and the other two, but no one takes a second look. The two families were embarrassed at this time, but they were too embarrassed to get up and leave. Senior Tang, your Tang family is doing business in the provincial capital. You really have a lot of money. I see a Beijing brand Rolls-Royce parked outside. It must be driven by you, right? Why is that car? How many millions? Chief Kui said to Tang Hui with envy in his eyes. Beijing Rolls-Royce. Tang Hui was taken aback, then looked at his father, Tang Shili. Rolls-Royce, or Beijing brand? Tang Shili was also a little confused, so he asked Mayor Kui, what license? It seems to be Jingyi. Mayor Kui said the license plate number. Why does this license plate sound so familiar? Tang Shili frowned slightly. Dad, isn't this Mr. Bai's car? Why is it here? Tang Hui said in surprise. Yes, it's Mr. Bai's car. It sounds familiar to me. Could it be that Mr. Bai has come to Horrendal? Tang Shili was also surprised. I'll take a look. After Tang Hui finished speaking, he got up and walked to the window, looking at the car outside through the window. When he saw it clearly, he hurriedly said to Tang Shili, "Dad, it's really Mr. Bai's car. Mr. Bai may also be eating here." When Tang Shili heard this, he hurried to the window to look out. The actions of these two people made many people in the box look confused, but the father and son didn't care at all. Let's go, and look for it, Mr. Bai must be here." Tang Shili pulled Tang Hui anxiously and ran out. There was only a group of people left in the box, with big eyes and small eyes, not knowing what happened, but only David knew what the father and son were looking for. Chapter 879. 10 minutes later, Tang Shili and Tang Hui came back sweating profusely. "No, why not?" Tang Shili frowned slightly. "Dad, could it be that the old man Bai knew about our investment in building a tourist attraction here, and came to visit me privately?" Tang Hui analyzed. "Possible." Tang Shili's body trembled slightly, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His company is just a subordinate company of the Bai family in Kyoto. The reason why Tang Shili chose to build a tourist attraction is that he hopes to get more benefits from it. Now that the old man Bai came down to visit him personally, if something was found out, it would be troublesome. "Tang Hui, send someone to look for it immediately, and go to the surveillance to see where the old man Bai has gone." Tang Shili is no longer in the mood to take care of the people in the private room, and now he has to quickly find Bai Xiaoshan. "Brother, what are you looking for? Do you want us to help find it together?" Barbara asked Tang Shili at this time. When Barbara said this, Tang Shili remembered it, so he said to Barbara, "Barbara, you came early, did you see where the person who drove the Rolls-Royce went?" Rolls-Royce? Barbara didn't understand what kind of car. Tang Shili hurriedly dragged Barbara to the window, pointed to the Rolls-Royce below and said, "If you see it, it's that black car." "Oh, you said that one, that's what we drove." Barbara looked at it and hurriedly said. They came in that car, of course Barbara knew, but Barbara didn't know the value of that car. "What? Did you come here?" Tang Shili was stunned, his face full of shock. "How is that possible? It's old man Bai's car. That car is nearly 10 million. Even if you sell all of you, you can't afford it. How dare you brag about it?" Tang Hui snorted coldly and said disdainfully, not treating Barbara as his elder at all. Seeing Tang Hui's attitude, David frowned slightly, and there was anger in his eyes. 10 million. Barbara sucked in a breath of air. "David, didn't you say this car belonged to a friend you borrowed? Is this car so expensive?" "Mom, I borrowed this car, and I don't know how much," David explained. Art. As soon as David finished speaking, Tang Hui immediately exclaimed, "This is the car of the old master Bai in Kyoto, how could it be lent to you to drive it? How could you be friends with the old man Bai? It's just nonsense, I think you stole this car, right?" "Zia, you can't talk nonsense, without real evidence, how can you say that David stole the car, this is illegal." Barbara turned pale when she heard what Tang Hui said. This is a car worth tens of millions. If David really stole it, it would be troublesome. What do you want? If you really drive the car, then he must have stolen it. He even dared to steal something from the Bai family in Jingjing, and he was too daring. Now, Tang Hui stared at David with excitement in his eyes. The Bai family would definitely be grateful for helping the Bai family find the car. "Barbara, how many times have I said that children must be well educated? Now it's okay, I made such a big mistake, and now I can't help you." After Tang Shili followed Barbara, he turned to look at Mayor Kui and said, "Mayor Kui, now there is a car thief here, please call and let him handle it." "Okay." Mayor Kui hurriedly took out his phone and called someone. "Brother, David borrowed it, he said he borrowed it." Seeing that David was going to be arrested, Barbara anxiously followed Tang Shili to explain. Barbara, are you stupid or I am stupid? Does your David have the ability to borrow tens of millions of luxury cars from Kyoto? Stop joking. Tang Shili said coldly. Chapter 880. Why not, brother David's girlfriend, but the daughter of the richest man in Horrendal, is rich. At this time, Chen Yingxia stood up and said. The richest man in Horrendal. Tang Shili sneered, the richest man in Horrendal is not a bullshit in the eyes of the Bai family, let alone an uncle of the richest family. David looked at Tang Shili and Tang Hui's face, and did not refute or explain. Barbara was already very anxious at this time, slapped Chen Baokuo with her hand and said, You damn old man, how come you don't know what to say? Chen Baokuo slowly raised his head to look at David and asked, David, Dad, just ask you, did you borrow this car? David nodded, and Chen Baokuo lowered his head again in satisfaction, without saying a word. Soon, several people in uniforms came, and Tang Hui kept saying, It's him, he's a car thief, hurry up and catch it. Several uniformed men tried to arrest David, but they were stopped by Barbara, Chen Yingxia, and the others. You have no evidence and no evidence, how can you arrest people indiscriminately, do you have any evidence? Barbara stopped those people and shouted anxiously. Chen Yingxia also took out her mobile phone and began to record a video, You are law enforcement, I want to record it, you will arrest people without evidence. Barbara and the others were extremely anxious, but at this moment, David was not panicking at all, but quietly looked at the father and son Tang Shili and Tang Hui. Brother, tell everything with evidence, you can't just say it casually, David has become a car thief. Aunt David also stood up and said to Tang Shili. Okay, don't you want evidence? I'll call the Bai family now and ask. If the Bai family says their car is lost, then David is undoubtedly a thief. Tang Shili said, took out his mobile phone and started calling. Seeing Tang Shili really calling, Barbara's face was full of nervousness. She was really afraid that the other party's car was really lost, so David's sin would be a big one. David had just come out of prison for a few months. If he was being sent in now, it would not be as simple as 3 years. Tang Shili put away the phone after making a call. Brother, do you understand? Did my David borrow the car? Barbara hurriedly asked. How can it be so fast? I have already called the manager of the Kyoto headquarters, and they will call Mr. Bai to verify. I don't have Mr. Bai's phone number. After Tang Shili finished speaking, he sat on the seat, lit a cigarette and smoked, his face full of joy. He and Tang Hui thought the same. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing during a meal. If this is to recover the car for the old man Bai, will the Bai family treat them badly in the future? As for David, Tang Shili would not care about it. In the face of his own future and interests, even if he is a nephew, he will kill his relatives righteously. Why is it so troublesome? I'll just call Mr. Bai directly. David said and took out his mobile phone. Do you have the contact information for Mr. Bai? Tang Shili was stunned for a moment, and looked at David in disbelief. Dad, listen to his nonsense. Do you think that Mr. Bai can know such a person who has been in prison? He must be pretending to be coercive. Let's ask him to call. Tang Hui didn't believe David's words at all. David did not refute, and directly dialed Bai Ziashan's number. At this moment, Bai Ziashan was in Gu Wenshan's courtyard, accompanied by Gu Wenshan and Zhao Waoqi, drinking tea and chatting with the three of them, and they were waiting to return to Kyoto with David. When Bai Ziashan received a call from David and listened to what David said, the entire popularity trembled. Grandpa, what's wrong with you? Seeing Bai Ziashan's appearance, Bai Zhantang hurriedly asked with concern.